There's a steel arch shelter that a two-man crew bolts together in a single afternoon, holds its interior temperature through a Montana winter on a fraction of the heating fuel a conventional cabin burns, carries wind load ratings that meet permanent structure requirements in the Florida Panhandle, and costs less than $600 for the bare shell. It was designed for the United States military. It is 80 years old. And three of the most advertised cabin kit brands in America, brands with decades of dealer networks, thousands of five-star reviews, and price tags that start at $28,000, cannot match its thermal performance on the test that determines what a structure actually costs to own. You are in the most expensive rural property market in modern memory. The way the cabin industry sells has barely changed in 40 years. There's been a better option sitting in plain sight the entire time. This is the story of what those brand names are actually worth. Start with why this matters to you right now. You are shopping in a market where a standard 12 by 24 cabin kit from one of 3 or 4 names that dominate every search result retails for $18,000 to $35,000 before you pour a foundation, pay for delivery, or spend $1 on interior finishing. That is the shell price. The number on the website before reality begins. The way most buyers navigate that decision is the same way most people navigate any large purchase they do not fully understand. They look at how long the company has been in business. They count the dealer locations. They read the reviews. They assume that a brand appearing everywhere must be there for a reason. It is a reasonable shortcut. It is also doing exactly the wrong job, measuring marketing reach when it should be measuring wall performance. None of those signals tell you what the structure will cost to heat across 10 winters. None of them tell you whether the panel connection system holds its moisture barrier after 15 seasons of freeze-thaw cycling in a climate the brochure photographed in July. None of them measure the whole wall thermal value of the assembly you are actually buying, rather than the insulation material tested in isolation in a laboratory. The cost of getting this wrong is not a refund situation. It is a structure you are permitted, finished out, and are now living inside for the next 2 decades, costing you more condition every single winter than it should. The 3 brands this video covers are exactly the ones you would find first. That is precisely the problem. To understand why the name became the decision, you have to go back to how these companies built their reputations in the first place. The first brand on this list was founded in 1987 in rural Wisconsin to serve the agricultural storage market. Small farms needed affordable outbuildings delivered fast, and this company provided them. The original product was honest and appropriate for its purpose. Pressure-treated post frames, steel roofing panels, engineered for snow loads in the upper Midwest. For that application, in that decade, the reputation was earned. What changed was the customer. By the early 2000s, demand for recreational cabin kits had grown enough that the company repackaged its agricultural framing system as a residential product. The post frame wall assembly that worked perfectly well for storing equipment, a system designed around large open spans with minimal insulation requirements, became the structural basis for a cabin kit sold to buyers who planned to sleep in it through A.W. A man in Duluth, Minnesota built a 16 by 32 cabin with this brand in 2019. His first full winter heating bill came to $2,340. His neighbor, in a conventionally framed cabin of nearly identical square footage, paid $1,180. The second brand on this list has a different problem, in some ways a worse one. The second brand positions itself differently. Where the first sells agricultural heritage, this one sells precision, factory-cut panel components, a system marketed as tighter and more thermally efficient than post-frame construction. The marketing is not entirely wrong. The product is more sophisticated. But picture the panel connection on a standard kit from this company. 2 wall panels meet at a vertical seam. Between them, a factory-applied bead of expanding foam sealant is the only material standing between the interior of your cabin and the exterior air. That seam is not a decorative joint. It is the thermal and moisture boundary of the entire structure, and it relies on a bead of foam applied under production line conditions, shipped several hundred miles on a flatbed, and then handled by a 2-man crew on a gravel pad in whatever weather arrived that week. An independent field assessment conducted by a building performance firm in Vermont in 2021 examined 14 panel kit cabins, from this manufacturer across the Northeast. In 11 of the 14, panel seams showed measurable air infiltration within the first 3 years' occupancy. In 6 of those 11, moisture had begun migrating into the panel core at the seam joint. The average remediation cost documented across those 6 cases was $4,800 per structure, not counting the interior finishing that had to come off the walls to reach the panels underneath. The buyer who purchased this kit saw a clean factory product in a showroom. He did not see the seam in year 3. The marketing says the system is engineered for performance. The field data says the seam is where that performance goes. The third brand on this list has the strongest reputation of the 3. That is what makes its numbers the most useful. The third brand has the longest history of the 3, founded in 1979 in the Pacific Northwest, originally serving the recreational property market in Oregon and Washington. It has the widest dealer network of any cabin kit manufacturer in North America, showroom locations in 31 states, and a starting price of $28,000 for its most basic shell. It is a name that appears in every magazine feature on off-grid retreats. It is the name real estate listings use as a selling point. It is also the name that fails most visibly when you place its wall assembly next to a mini Quonset on a standardized thermal test. The brand's flagship wall system carries a manufacturer-stated R value of R21. That number is real. It describes the performance of the insulation material tested in isolation in a laboratory without the framing members that interrupt it every 6D. A mini Quonset with 2 inches of closed-cell spray foam applied to its interior surface delivers a continuous, uninterrupted R13 with no framing members crossing the thermal boundary at any point. A wall rated R21 on paper, outperformed in the field by a wall rated R13. Read that again. The premium does not go into the wall. It goes into the dealer network, which brings us to the structure in the title. And I want to be straight with you about what it actually is and what it is not. A man in Bozeman, Montana put up a 14 by 24 mini Quonset on his property in 2022. His total materials cost for the steel arch shell, 2 framed end walls, a standard entry door, and 1 window opening came to $580. He spent 2 additional weekends applying closed-cell spray foam to the interior surface, bringing his all-in investment to $1,340 before any finishing work. His first full winter heating bill, in a climate that sustains temperatures below 0 from December through February, came to $640 for season. A neighbor in a conventionally framed cabin of nearly identical square footage, purchased from one of the brands discussed here, paid $1,890 across the same winter. Now, the title of this video implies something worth correcting directly. A mini Quonset shell is not a finished cabin. It is not a permitted dwelling in every jurisdiction. It arrives without insulation, interior finishing, or plumbing roughed in. What it is a thermally superior, structurally engineered shell at a price point the name brands cannot match when performance is a measurement rather than marketing. That is the honest version. It is considerably more useful than the shorthand. The reason the shell outperforms a wood frame kit that costs 20 times more is not branding or novelty. It is physics, and the physics is the whole story. Picture a cathedral arch, the kind that has been holding up stone buildings for 800 years without steel reinforcement. It is strong not because of its mass, but because of its shape. Load applied to the crown travels down the curved surface and disperses outward at the base. No single point absorbs a force. The entire structure shares it continuously. A mini Quonset is that exact principle expressed in corrugated steel. The arch carries the roof load, the snow load, and the lateral wind force through geometry alone, without interior columns, without load-bearing partition walls, without the dense network of framing members a conventional cabin kit requires just to stay upright. Because no framing members connect the exterior skin to the interior surface, there is no path for heat to travel from the warm side of the wall to the cold side at regular intervals. The insulation is not interrupted at 16-inch spacing by a piece of wood that conducts heat straight through it. The thermal boundary runs continuously from one end of the structure to the other. The whole wall performs the way the insulation rating says it. A 2-man crew bolts a standard 14-foot mini Quonset shell together in 6 to 8 hours. The equivalent stick frame cabin kit requires 3 to 5 days of framing before the structure is weathertight. The Quonset uses approximately 4% of its total weight as structural lumber. A frame cabin kit of equivalent size uses closer to 22. The design is not new. The United States Navy standardized it in 1941 because Pacific Island conditions demanded a shelter that could ship flat, assemble without heavy equipment, and outlast the weather that destroyed everything built around it. Structures from that first wave of production are still standing on farms and homesteads across the rural American West, repurposed as workshops, barns, and storage buildings. 80 years of weather, still doing their job. So let me put the full paradox on the table, because by now it should genuinely bother you. Open any cabin kit comparison site and examine what gets ranked first. It is not whole wall thermal performance. It is not documented moisture resistance across 15 winter seasons. It is not independent load testing results. It is dealer location count, review volume, and years in operation. Those are the signals the algorithm rewards. They are also the signals that have nothing to do with what the wall does on a February night in northern Idaho. The dealer is the first friction point. The 3 brands covered here have spent decades building regional distribution networks, showrooms, installation partnerships, and financing relationships with rural lenders. A steel arch manufacturer with a superior product and a fraction of the marketing budget cannot replicate that infrastructure in a single product cycle. The dealer is already there. The Quonset supplier often is not within 200 miles of the buyer. Then there is a reviewer, a man who purchased a post-frame cabin kit in 2014 and has never had a roof leak is a satisfied customer. He leaves 5 stars. He is not wrong that it does not leak. He has never run an energy audit. He has never compared his heating bill against a structure with a continuous thermal envelope. His review is genuine and nearly useless for the decision the next buyers try and make. Then there is a lender. Cabin loan products offered through rural credit cooperatives and agricultural financing programs are designed around structures with established dealer resale networks. A steel arch shell without a brand name on an approved product list creates a paperwork problem. In documented cases in Montana and Wyoming, buyers pursuing mini Quonset financing through regional agricultural lenders were told the structure did not fit an existing loan category. The financing was declined. And then there is the appraiser. An appraiser values your structure by comparing it to recent sales of similar buildings nearby. If no steel arch structures have sold in your county in the past 3 years, and in most RU, nobody banned the better option. They just built the entire infrastructure around the one that came first. So, should you build with a mini Quonset? Here's the fair-minded answer, because this is not the right choice for everyone, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. Where you build matters before anything else. Call your local building department before you purchase a shell and confirm that your jurisdiction recognizes steel arch structures under its applicable code. Some rural counties have no issue. Others require an engineer's stamp for any non-conventional structure, and that stamp is a real cost that belongs in your budget from the beginning, not a surprise that arrives after the order is placed. There are genuine trade-offs in the technology. Finishing a curved interior wall is a different job than finishing a flat one, and a builder who has never done it will fumble it. Moisture detailing at the end wall connections requires more care than a standard stick frame corner. And the resale market for steel arch structures is thin in most regions, which means the appraiser who values your property may be working without comparable sales. Exactly the problem described a moment ago, now applying to your own investment. None of those are reasons to walk away. They are the homework. Skipping the homework is how a genuinely superior structure becomes a headache. First, call the building department before purchasing anything and confirm code recognition for the structure type in your jurisdiction. Second, ask any manufacturer for their third-party load and thermal testing documentation. A serious company has it prepared. A careless one will not. Third, ask specifically for the whole wall R value, not the cavity R value. The number they give you tells you whether they understand the question. Fourth, if you are in a high snow load or high wind region, retain your engineer before the purchase, not after. Fifth, build a workshop or storage structure first. Work through the assembly process yourself, and let that experience tell you what a living space build will require before you commit to one. The trusted brand name is not a fact. It is a default. And the moment you separate the name from performance data, you are no longer choosing by inertia. You are choosing by evidence. That is a different kind of decision. It tends to produce a different kind of result. If cutting through the noise on builds like this is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribing is the simplest way to make sure the next one reaches you. And if you found this one worth your time, the video on your screen right now covers a completely different structure that the market has been ignoring for the same reasons.